Hello everyone, it's your boy Shaf, aka That Mill Guy, coming at you with another interview, discussion, video. I mean, look, Ramtin here hasn't won Magic Worlds yet, but we're here to talk about something maybe second to that. So, you know, fingers crossed he does one day, but we're here to talk about some Nami. Ramtin's been cooking in the kitchen here, and I'm kind of bearing the lead by introducing him for you, so I'm going to let him do that in a second here. But really, in today's discussion, we want to go over some 07 Nami. We want to talk everything OPTCG and hopefully answer some of those long buried questions y'all have in a post-ban meta. Why don't you take us off here, Ramtin? Let's give you the floor.
Actually, thank you for having me, Shaf. It's a pleasure to be here again. And yeah, I'm so excited about talking about 07 Nami.
Perfect. I mean, Ramtin, I'm always here to have you back. Like, I always like to talk about how, look, I'm never gonna pretend to be the best Nami player out there. I'm just someone that plays a ton and makes a bunch of videos on YouTube, right? So, you know, the only credibility I have is that I probably play more games than the average player. So that's it. Do I play them better? No, that's why I got you, Ramtin. So that's why I got folks like you on the channel to rein me in. So I wanted to really, again, use this discussion to talk about the list that you had, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna drop a little truth bomb. I was scared about 07. I'm not gonna lie. I did not. I've been a Sengoku hater since like the first 3 times I tested him. I'm not gonna lie. I did not understand it. I did not like Sengoku. Everyone was doing it. I'm like, I don't like. Firstly, in the beginning, I didn't want to play 7 cross croc. It wasn't my play style. So I didn't want to do that, and then Sengoku just didn't feel like it did enough. But then I played Kuja Pirates, and I'm like, oh, there's some fun pieces here, but it felt too slow. Talk to me, Ramtin, about, you know, maybe just give me a general overview, because I don't want to jump into it just yet, but how has your 07 testing been in general with Nami?
But it was kind of a nightmare when I started to play OP7. Nothing was feeling smooth. Everything was bricky. Everything was slow. I tried the Sengoku list, and yeah, I was not happy about it. I was playing overheat, and yeah, my hands were super heavy. Then I tried Kuja with Margaret. I didn't like the flexibility of Margaret, because they had no counter, no trigger. So it was really hard when you had hands with Love Beam, Deathwing. All the hand was heavy, so there was something that was not fitting in the style. So I was actually coming back to Impel Down list. And I was like, but it's not possible. I can't play Impel Down with Buggy and Deathwing and Arabesque for like for 4 sets. It's not possible. So I was like, I was checking all the Discord or the Japanese player, and when I saw a Japanese player playing Kuja but with Apis, I was like, this is the key. This is the key, because you can now play more breaks. You can play the Searcher because you can play Femur. And if you play Femur, you can play Apis, and everything. Like, Apis is fixing all my problem right now.
Well, look. So I want to actually build up to this. So I'm so happy you kind of created the carrot for us to follow here. So, you know, playing another dead card actually helps the Nami list. I want to kind of use this video to showcase the theme here. I think our motto really here is, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You know, I've had a lot of people in my YouTube comments and in my DMs as well just asking me, like, why are you playing another dead card, right? And again, remember, this is not my list. I did not make it. This is straight from Ramtin and some other folks. But why are they playing a dead card? And I think that's what we're going to talk about again. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts, right? Like the synergies you have with this dead card, like adding this other dead card that has its trigger that enables these other cards, all of it coming together actually creates a better deck than you would think.
Exactly.
But I want to try and lead up to this. Let's talk about some of the frustrations, or maybe you know, the ups and downs that Nami players have had in 06. What are some general trends that you've seen with some cards? For example, How many Zephs were you playing in 06? You know, how are you feeling about Mr. 1, the Impel Down package? You kind of talked about it there. Talk to me about some of the difficulties that you were having in 06.
I played only one tournament in OP6, one regional tournament. I did like X2. I was like 19, but the top cut was top 16. And I gave a last chance to Zeph. It's really, really, really a bad card right now. It does nothing. Like, I was not even able to play one time during my tournament. It was like 2 weeks ago. And I was so disappointed by Zeph. There is nothing to do more with the character. I even in the recent list, people were playing like Gravity Tiger. They were removing the Zeph and I gave a last chance to Zeph, but it's a bad card. Don't play it for real.
I think I largely agree. You know, I was testing the EB01 Mr. 1 as well. Like I was like you never get to swing in. So can we have like maybe we can take advantage of a better on play? You know, so that way, you know, Mr. 1 came down and it was even on cards. He would go up. I was forcing stuff like Logetown. The Logetown stuff though, I'm not gonna lie. Look, in practice is one of those things where it was actually a lot better. It was actually a lot better than I thought it was, but that's for future. If RP Law ever gets shut down, maybe I'll revisit Logetown. For now though, Zeph not being that great. I think I agree that on play and you know, we'll talk about the metagame itself, but it just felt like you didn't really get to take advantage of it, because Zeph wasn't just, you know, feel free to correct me, but Zeph wasn't just about the on play. At the end of the day, it felt like it really needed to have the chance to at least swing once, right? Like that's what you really needed, even if it didn't hit, even if it pulled cards out of your opponent's hand, forced them to play a little bit differently. That's what you needed. But do you feel like Zeph can actually do that in this meta, or is it just a 5-cost mill 2?
Yeah, it's impossible that you can reach an attack with Zeph. In OP5, it was possible. In OP6, in OP5, it was possible against yellow, but now it's NR is playing Shura is playing a couple of blockers. So it's impossible to attack and connect one attack. You can still like bounce one of your Kaya and mill 2, but five costs to do that is way too expensive. It's not relevant anymore.
Yeah, and especially with some of the cards that we're going to be talking about in the list coming up, there's just, you know, there's ways you could do that, you know, on your opponent's turn, like bouncing the Kaya and reusing it and everything. It feels so expensive, which hurts me as someone who owns, you know, a playset of the alt art Zephs. It's okay. Maybe one day we'll come back. Keep them. Yeah, keep them. I mean, you know, I'm not selling them, but talk to me about some of the other cards in the list. Like you know, maybe before we get to the Impel Down package, how are you feeling about Mr. 1? This is a card that I think a lot of people looking at the Kuja Pirates list that we're talking about are gonna have a hard time getting rid of, because Mr. 1 has served us really well. It's been a really great card, recurring Gavels and for all those edgelords out there, you know, they're like, oh, I can also return Impel Down to play Impel Down, discard 2 cards, play Death. I'm like, all right, so the one play you made once in your lifetime, that's not what Mr. 1 is for anyway. So talk to me about Mr. 1.
So, you know, in the Nami deck, there is a lot of cards that need a setup. Like when you have Arabesque in hand, you need a setup, because without any other card, Arabesque is useless. Same for Deathwing, you need a setup. You need to have a really little hand. Same for Love Beam, it's a setup card. You need to have 3 cards or less.
Right.
And Mr. 1 is one of the setup cards that need a setup, because when you play Mr. 1 and you played tons of game with Nami, there is only 2 targets you can take with Mr. 1. It's Gum Gavel, and the second one is Desert Spada. You take Spada when you are in a really bad position, because you need to find your Kaya or your Sanjay Pilaf, and you take the Gavel because it's the best target you can take. So again, it's a setup card because you need to have Gavel or Spada in your trash, and if you don't have, it's just a counter 1000. And it's why it's one of the cards that you can bench, because they need a setup. They are not that good, and yeah, you have to pay 1 to take back a Gavel, pay again 1, discard 1 card. It's not it's a good card, but it's one of the cards you remove when you are improving your list. I mean, when it evolves, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. What you're highlighting is actually really important here, and I'm happy you phrased it that way, where Mr. One requires a lot of setup, and I think we've seen that with a lot of how Nami's playstyle has evolved over time. Going into 06, there's been a lot of lines that a lot of folks have been used to. And these are the type of lines where it requires 2-3 card setups to set up certain combos, you know, setting up Deathwing, setting up Zeph in a certain way where you don't want to play a card or unless you can bounce it with Zeph. Or you're right, like you know, Mr. One being a glorified 1k counter in hand without the proper targets. And I think I want to lead that discussion into Impel Down. You know, how do you feel that Impel Down package, you know, it's changed over time? Right, like a lot of folks have removed Brickfist entirely. We're still on Impel Down All Stars, but even Deathwing, like on the topic of setting up cards, how do you feel about the Impel Down package?
You know, Impel Down is my archetype of heart, you know, because it's the first one I played. I really like it. I like Buggy, I like Deathwing. Yeah. But you know, Deathwing is a really good card against people that doesn't know the card. You know, there is tons of player now that are playing a lot against Nami, and they know when you have 3 done open, 1 card in hand, they basically know that you have the Deathwing in hand. They will attack for 11 or for 5 because it will be useless to attack with more. But so it's a really easy, predictable card, and it's why now when we are evolving the deck list, we are trying to play on this, because people are playing around Deathwing, and now we don't have any more Deathwing, or we have one on our trash, you know. But now people know it, and there is tons of players in my local store that they are like, okay, you have three done, I won't attack, or I will attack for 11. So it's kind of hard to surprise people right now with Deathwing, you know?
Yeah. And I'm happy you brought that up as well, because I think this is something I try and bring up in my videos too, because I feel like it happens to me when I go to locals, more so when I play on the sim. And I think it's maybe just because of the player base. And I think it still happens even on the ranked bounty too, where there are a lot of players that reach a peak when they learn Nami. And what you're describing is the level 2, and it all depends on the type of player you play against. So let me highlight a situation, and I promise it's going to be relevant before we hop into 07 deck list here. So let's highlight a situation where you have maybe 2 cards in hand, you have 5 done up, and you have 3 life left, right? And then you also have maybe, you know, let's say 50, you know, some like 12-13 cards left in your deck, right? In your hand is like not a love maybe like a rubber band and a Deathwing, right? So you have all the Dawn you need to cast. Your opponent's got like 2 more characters to attack with. Is it correct for them to attack there? In my opinion, no, it's not at all, because me as the Nami player, right, at like 12 cards left, 10 cards left, I would just take all the hits because I have 3 life left. I'm going to take the hits. I'm going to see if those triggers, you know, run me out, like draw me some cards. And then I'm going to set myself up to go through 5, 6, 7 cards on their turn and win the game from there. But as a good opponent, you recognize that. In so many of my videos, you know, a lot of people miss this, but at the end of the games, you'll notice so many people will attack in for no reason. You don't need to give me cards. I have just taken hits, hit, gone to 0, and all of a sudden 2 out of 3 out of 4 of my triggers draw me 2 cards, right? And that's not correct. Good opponents will realize they should not be attacking there. They will not set up your Deathwing. They will not play into your Love Mellow. They will not attack you. They'll just wait. They'll give you a hit or 2. They'll see the situation. They'll be like, all right, I'm going to back off. Because next turn, you know, they're going to read the room. They're going to be like, oh, he has no more White Snakes. They have no more white snakes. I'm then going to attack in the turn after. And this is again what I want to highlight, what Ramtin was talking about, setup, right? You spend so much time setting up Deathwing, setting up the optimal, you know, you discard this card, which wasn't great, but then it allows you to draw a card off of Love, Love, Mellow. Like you spend so much time setting up these lines that your opponent, when you play against a good opponent, they take advantage of it. They will take you down to the ground, right? The average opponent does not know how to play. The majority of people still don't know how to play against Nami. It's not about, it's not like a lot of people don't, and they suck. They suck at the game. I've seen it game after game. You know, they swing 7Ks, they swing 9Ks, and they think that's it. No, it's actually when you enter this endgame scenario, how are you enabling the opponent, right? How are you enabling the Nami player? And I don't know how you feel about that. I just went on a mini rant about, like, I don't think the majority of the One Piece TCG player base knows how to actually play against Nami. And still they're the ones that are like, Nami's trash, I'm leaving the lobby, I'm not playing against this.
Yeah, I really think it's one of the deck that if one day all the One Piece player know Nami, it's one of the deck that will disappear. Because even like if Sakazuki, like if everyone knows Sakazuki, it will be still a good deck, you know. But but Nami is different, because if all the people know how to play against Nami, I think they wouldn't.
Yeah. And again, it's the intricacies, right? Like a lot of people, they'll stop their Nami learning, which is good for us, at being like, okay, I'll just swing 9Ks. That's it. That's beating Nami, right? No, it's not. It's not, because then the better Nami players will put you in a situation and force you to think. Because at the end of the day, this is, I think, a statement that sounds true. You can play perfectly with Nami and still lose every time, because the deck relies so much on its triggers, right? Those 5 life are so functional to you winning or losing that game. I would say so many games, it's correct to almost, unless you're so far ahead and your opponent sucks, it's so correct to just take all 5 life. At some point, like it's just the correct thing to do. You need to. It's almost like that. Those, you need to maximize your draw 2 triggers to even win the game. And I think that's where I think all the cards that Nami has landed us. We require too much setup. How do we reduce setup? How do we take control of the game? And I think that's what your list has done, Ramtin. I think that's what your list has done. Taking control. Talk to me about Kuja Pirates. What did, before going to the list, what did 07 give us? What did 07 give us?
So basically, OP7 give us, in the Kuja package, give us Margaret. I don't know how you say it in English. In French, it's Margaret, but is it Marguerite?
I've been saying Margaret.
Right?
Yeah, I've been saying Margaret. Yeah.
Okay. So it gave us Margaret, and it gave us the Snake Dance. This is the 2 good cards in the Kuja package that are more than playable.
Yep. And I think like Snake Dance being at a base level of 4K counter, obviously, checking a lot of boxes there. But then also, being able to bounce your own stuff, recur your own stuff, talking about how, it still requires setup, but it's a bit more proactive, right? Like now that we're playing all these characters, we are able to bounce them, we are able to recur them. Your opponent can't remove everything. Talk to me a little. I was just gonna say, talk to me about the trigger. Talk to me about the Snake Dance trigger.
For real, if you already play Nami and resolve this trigger, it's just so good. You can you get back your Kaya or your Apis, and you bring back 1 5-cost kid. It's really good.
Yeah, and again, just for those of you watching, just to clarify, the trigger is you have to be able to return a character you own. I believe it's 3 costs or less, or it's 2 costs or less. I can't remember, but you have to be able to return a character. Sorry?
Is it not one of your character? Maybe, I don't know.
Is it any character?
I'm not sure.
I think it's, it's cost restriction on the front side. I'm forgetting the card. Yeah, it's cost restriction on the actual event, not the trigger. Okay, yes, you have to return one of your characters, and then you get to return a character of 5 cost or less on your opponent's side. I believe it restricts that end. You can't just return 2 of your own characters. That's the restriction.
Yeah, the trigger is you may return one of your character to the owner.
Yeah. Okay. So in that case, as you were saying, being able to bounce two characters, recur what you need, and it's a trigger that you have to get used to. I'm still having to get used to, like, okay, do I play around the fact that this trigger could be a snake dance? Because it's, you know, mandatory condition triggers is not something I think Nami players are used to. So, you know, keep that in mind if this is something where, like, you know, maybe if you're able to afford to take a hit first instead of countering out the first attack, taking the second attack, if you're able to afford taking the first one, it might be better based on now playing snake dance.
Actually, when you are playing against low, it's something you have to play around. The matchup is that hard that you have to like you have to decide that this has to be the trigger and play around that trigger, because if you don't have this trigger, it's basically lost. So every time your opponent is doing a mistake by putting a character attacking, then even if you have the counter, you have to take the life, because like this you maybe can win the game by taking the life, bouncing the kid, and after that he can't use his ability of his leader.
Yeah.
So sometimes even if you have the counter, take the life.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. We're going to talk about the law matchup in depth, 100%. Yeah. Like that's definitely, I think, a matchup that's so relevant moving forward. But let's talk about Margaret. Let's talk about Gloriosa. So Margaret, and I think we're going to talk about Perfume Femur finally. But talk to me about Margaret.
Yeah. So Margaret, it's not a good card actually. It's not.
I kind of agree. It's not the best thing in the world, but.
Yeah, it's the first time that you are playing a card in your deck, in your Nami deck, in the entire history of Nami. It's the first time that you actually play a card that you can't play during your opponent turn as a counter or as an event, and that hasn't a trigger. So it's the first time we are playing this kind of card. So it's why I'm saying it's not a really good card, but in some of the matchup, it's not bad. You can search it with the grandma, and you draw one. You have a blocker, but it's not that good. You don't have this flexibility to take your life, and it's why we are removing some of our setup card like Deathwing. We are removing them because if we have to take our life and it's a Margaret, we can't play it during our opponent turn. There is no trigger, and our Deathwing is kind of dead in our hand. So it's why we are kind of removing some key card, put some average card, and of course you can search it, and it's why it's played. Yeah. Because you can search it, and in some of your empty turn when you have nothing to play, it's not bad to play it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important. A lot of folks have kind of brought up the fact that, it doesn't have a counter on it. It costs so much just to draw one card. Yep. And I think at the end of the day, what it really is that it forces action, right? It's kind of like, it's almost like Zeph, where because of the fact that it has blocker, it just forces your opponent to do something about it. Right, whether or not you're playing against like a non-black matchup or a non-black red matchup, and they're not able to deal with it, they have to swing into it. So great, it's kind of like a free infinite counter, right? It's just a free take out an attack against the non-black red matchups, and against the other black red, like against the other matchups, it just forces them to use Dawn, right? Like they have to spend Dawn and an ability to get rid of it, and that then. That's less Dawn that they're using to attack you for that turn. That's an ability that's not hitting your Kaya,
and even more, they force them. Oh, sorry, they're ringing on the door.
Go for it. We'll take a pause here. Short pause, but we are back. I just confirmed with Ramtin insider information. When you open your One Piece TCG packs and you don't open up your Altar Boas, it's because Bandai has just shipped all of the Altar Boas to Ramtin's house. So please. Find him. He owns all the Altar Boas. So for all of you Dofi players out there, he's stealing your cards. But back into the Nami discussion here. Let's continue to talk about. I believe we were just kind of discussing some Margaret and kind of how that card forces some action. So did you want to continue to elaborate there? Again, just being a blocker, not having a counter though. Like
I was saying, Yeah, I was saying it's force your opponent to switch him attack. Like he can't attack for 11k or 30k when you have a blocker. He had to modify them all of them attack. So it's a good point to have a kind of blocker in Nami, because he has to decide how he will attack.
Yeah, and that's going to be exactly, and that's going to be really important, right? Just, you know, if especially against a law matchup, we'll talk about if there's going to be situations where, you know, maybe they have to point the minus ability at the blocker. That's a minus ability going at the blocker, not your Kaya's, which you can maybe recur with your snake dances and stuff. So, you know, small wins, it happens here and there, but everything's situational. The next card I want to talk about, Ramtin, talk to me about the grandmother, Gloriosa herself. What's going on with Gloriosa?
So in Nami deck, in general, Searcher are really good, because you can pick one card from your deck, so it's one card less in your deck. You can put back 4 cards in the bottom of your deck, so you can have some control on the end of the game. So usually Searcher were always super good in Nami deck. The thing was that even if Kuja is a nice archetype, it was kind of hard to play the Grandma, because we didn't have enough hit. Like if you do the math, it was not efficient to play a Searcher in this kind of deck, because you didn't have enough hit, enough target to take back. So it was mathematically not correct to play her, because you only had Snake Dance, Margaret, and Love Beam, and 12 it's a bit light for playing a Searcher. And it's why we add Femur to be able to play a Searcher.
Well, talk to me about talk to me about Perfume Femur then.
Yeah, here is the mind path. Like, I mean, the mind pack of the deck, like to build the deck. Like, you want to play Kuja, but you discover that you can't play the Searcher because you don't have enough hit. So it's not even relevant to play Margaret, another card, to play the Kuja, because you can't play the Searcher. So you add Femur, and now that you play Femur, you have enough hit to play the Searcher. So it's again relevant to play the Searcher. And when you have Margaret, the Searcher, Femur, the thing is your deck is not that good, because you have a lot of break with Femur. Your deck is super heavy, and it's why, I'm sure we will talk about that, it's why Apis is the perfect key that is resolving all the problem, because playing Apis lets you play more breaks, because your breaks card becoming Kaya or Sanji Pilaf, and it's why it's resolving everything. So here is a bit the path of the deck building of the deck. If you don't play Apis, you can't play Femur. If you don't play Femur, you can't play the Searcher. And if you can't play the Searcher, it's not even relevant to play the Kuja. Just go back to Impel Down. And it's why I was stuck, because I was like, but I just prefer Impel Down. And then I add Femur, I could add the Searcher, and when I add the Searcher, I add Apis, and everything was so smooth after that.
Literal just chef's kiss, just outlined it perfectly. That's why I have y'all on this channel, because you can actually articulate it well. So exactly, just giving you enough hits off the Searcher, and that's what Femur is, right? So at a base level, yes, the card is largely dead. You don't play any 7 Warlords type characters in your deck, or you shouldn't be, and so you're not going to be able to use its ability off the rip. It's there for a draw trigger. It's there to be discarded to Gavel, Kaya, and Apis. And then it's also there to be searched off of Gloriosa as an additional hit. It does everything the deck needs it to do. It's fodder, it's a trigger, it's a searchable target. It doesn't need, if it did something on the front side, even better. Heck, if it just gave us a 1k counter, whatever. It just, actually, if it gave us a 1k counter, it might have been insane, but we probably would have been playing it a lot sooner. But yeah, like it does everything. And I think bringing back Apis because of it, because you're right, now we have 8 different cards in the deck, not different, 8 cards, 2 cards, 4 copies each of dead cards in the main deck. Impel Down All Stars doesn't draw us cards, it just discards cards. The Perfume Femur, two Dawn to do nothing. It doesn't even discard cards, right? It doesn't even make our hand size small. It just does nothing. What does Apis do for us? What is Apis? So many Nami players haven't experienced Apis. This was a card of old. This was a card that used to be a 2-of in the deck list. Talk to me about Apis.
So Apis, it's the weird card. It's the card that every TCG player doesn't like. You have to do -2. You do -3 actually. You get back
-3,
1.
Yeah.
You take back 1 2. You take 1 card, so it's -2. But it seems that in Nami deck the best card is already a -1. It's Kaya. So you don't really have to think in the classical TCG way. But Apis. Apis is it's the key. So you discard 2 cards. If you have a big hand with a lot of brick, you can discard the brick. If you have tons of Love Beam or White Snake, and it's 2, and you have nothing to play during your turn, you can discard 2 cards and go back to take 2 really strong hits, and it's Sanji Pilaf and Kaya. And of course, you can rearrange your last 4 cards of the bottom of your deck. So this is relevant too. But you can go take 1 Sanji Pilaf or 1 Kaya, and that's super strong in the deck actually, because it's the 2 best. If you don't touch this card, you can't win the game, because you are just stuck by passing your turn with a lot of Dawn open.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? Like it's not. I mean, look, even before this deck list right now, Apis was being played again, 1 cost on play, 0 power. You discard 2 cards, and you're looking at the top 5 for an East Blue type. That East Blue type can be Kaya, it can be Pilaf, it used to be it used to be Zeph, and then Rubber Band is still a target on it as well. I think there's one more still. Is Gavel?
It's Gavel.
Yeah, Gavel's still target. Yeah, exactly. There's still one more target in there. So there's 4 relevant targets. If you don't hit your best target, honestly, is probably Pilaf. Kaya's close tied. It really depends on the amount of Dawn you have. It depends on your current situation. But those are your best targets. But yeah,
because if you do -2 by playing Apis, and you take 1 Pilaf, it becoming just -1, and you have you have removed 3 cards from your deck.
Yeah, and so let me again clarifying the math of this, because a lot of folks have a hard time kind of understanding like the concept of card advantage, and you explained it at the start there. So Apis is 1 card out of your hand. You then play to remove 2 cards out of your hand. You're down 3 cards. Right? In terms of card advantage is determined by the amount of cards in your hand, the resources that you have access to in a TCG. So you're down 3 pieces of resources. You then add 1 resource to your hand. Ideally, hopefully. Oh Lord, if you whip on Apis, I hope you never have to experience that. I hope nobody has to experience that. Whiffing on Apis is horrible. But you add a card to your hand. So now you're only down 2. You're still -2. If that card is now Sanji's Pilaf, you play that card. You're back to -3. But then you draw 2 cards. You're down to -1, right? So that's the math you have to do, right? Like these are the mental gymnastics you have to do to understand, is this play worth it? And honestly, if Kaya is going to be -1, you play 1, draw 2, discard 2. If it's going to be -1, why not make another play that's also -1 as well? That again is getting 3 cards out of your deck, right? 4 Dawn, 3 cards, -4 cards. It's not bad. It's not bad when you do all the math together. It's not terrible. Would you spend 4 Dawn to draw 3 cards? Hell yeah. I would play that event in a heartbeat. 4 Dawn, draw 3 cards, slot me up. Let's go. Mess me up. I'd play that event in a heartbeat. That's functionally like what. Oh, can you imagine if pudding allowed you to target yourself? Oh, destructive. It'd be an insta-ban. Oh Lord. We'd be playing, our deck list would be like Gum Rains and Gavel, and then just play pudding. Like that's all our deck list would be. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I'm going off on it right here. So Apis, additionally, talk to me about its flexibility in hand as well. It's also a 2K counter. How relevant is that?
Yeah, so it's super relevant, because at the early time I was playing Nami, I was like, 2K counter are not that important, Why? Because you already have 2k event, and you usually need to just add 1k counter. Like they are attacking for 9k. Perfect, you use your 1 gavel and you add 1k counter, you know. And usually in the deck building, it's less punishing to have less 2k counter than 1k counter in Nami deck, because what I said with the event, because you just have to add 1k. So at first I was like, if you want to play 2k just to play 2k, it's not relevant, because Nami is not like this. But now low player, the best card against red purple low is actually white snake, and low player are learning that. They will usually attack for 6k, and in that case sometimes having a 2k counter is really good.
So relevant. Again, I'm so happy you're framing this in an applicable way. Yes, law players are learning that white snake is the best card, so having that 2k counter to cross that threshold is so important. The numbers are there, and again, like at a baseline, you just have a free 2k counter. You just have a free, you don't even need it to be like super relevant. You're playing more dead cards, but Apis is giving you another free 2k counter that doesn't cost anything. You know, it's a free Spada, free rubber band at its face, whatever.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And again, just having that applicable, you know, a lot of folks are going to start swinging 6k at you, those aggressive matchups, because white snake is that good. So I'm happy you've kind of outlined it here. You know, Kuja Pirates package, 8 dead cards, Apis. Like, talk to me about your general experience with this deck list. Like, do you find it's, you know, that it's losing a lot of cards? You don't have a lot of cards in hand. Are you able to proactively get cards out? Your triggers, like, what's your general experience been like playing this deck list?
For real, it's going so smooth. Like, as you said at the start of the video, you said that on the paper it looks so bad. You are playing 8 breaks, 4 appies. When you see the list, you are like, no, it can't work. And when I saw a similar list like this of a Japanese player that was playing tons of appies, I was like, no, it can't work. And when I started to build the deck, I understood what was in his mind, and for real, I really like the deck. For me, the deck was never that strong that it is today. You know, it's the best way to play Nami, and the smoother way. Like, I don't see any disadvantage to this list, for real.
No, and again, that's what I want to highlight again. Like, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Like, when this deck list comes together, like, so someone in the YouTube comments was like, why would you play a brick? Why would you play a bad card? How does that make it better? Why don't you just play a Deathwink in that slot, right? Why don't you just play another event in that slot? Well, again, you're losing some of the other the other flexibility that you get. Again, you don't have the draw one trigger. If you're to play a Deathwink is a bounce trigger, valuable bounce trigger, but it's a bounce trigger. You can't search it up with Gloriosa. A lot of the other events that we could play isn't searchable by Gloriosa, so you lose that point as well, right? So you're losing a lot of these flexibilities that you get, and you're then removing a lot of the options that you have just to quote unquote add an option by playing the card. You don't need, and that's the crazy part. You don't need the card. You don't need to play the card for it to be good. Mind blown. Insane, right? Like that. You don't need to be able to play the card. It can just enable your other cards more. That's all. Yeah,
because the game is not like this. If you want to, because when you think about Nami, you're like, okay, I will put good card like Deathwink is doing 2 + 6k Zeph. It can end the game. Arabesque, bring back some Kaya and things. But the game is not like this. You need to be able to have cheap interaction, cheap play, because you can't play, okay, I'm playing 1 Kaya, I'm bring back it with Arabesque, it costs 4. It's not like this anymore. You everything it's go faster, everything is give more threat against our deck. So you have to be do cheap cost interaction, and it's why now the deck is more like this.
And let me start off by saying, look, two things. So I've been a Brickfist hater from day one. I didn't like it. I get it. I've won my fair share of games by, you know, Kaya, Brickfist, Kaya, whatever, or like bouncing a blocker, swinging in with Zeph. Like I won my fair share of games. Fine. I've been a Brickfist hater. I'm happy it's gone. Deathwink though, whew, that'll be a card close to my heart forever. That is a card that if it ever is relevant again, the fact that in your list you're playing one copy, which we'll talk about why you're playing that one copy. The fact that you're playing one copy in there, oh, chef's kiss. Look, any chance I have to play Deathwink, I love Deathwink. That card is so good. It definitely is. If you're not playing, in my opinion, if you're not playing the Kuja Pirates package, you should be playing Deathwing. I have not seen any evidence to tell me otherwise. I think that outside of Kuja Pirates, Deathwink is the best thing you could be doing, because at the end of the day, it's an instant speed peel off. That's my opinion. But talk to me about Deathwink in your list. You're playing a one of. Why are you playing a one of? You kind of highlighted this in your tweet.
Yeah, this is because here in my local store, people really knows well Nami. Like it's more hard for me to win a local store than doing a top cut in Rager, because people are knowing by heart the deck, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to bait them sometimes, and I had this idea of putting one Deathwing on my deck list. Like these people, and it happens on my first game at my local. So I put one Deathwing. I had like 12 cards in my deck, and I had like a eight done open with 2 cards in hand, and my opponent, a close friend of mine, was checking my trash, and he was like, "Oh, you only have one Deathwing in your trash." So it was it was painful for him, because he had to think like, okay, do I attack? Do I don't attack? So at this point, I was like, oh, this is perfect, because he's going to constantly playing around Deathwing, and I don't have it. I just will take my life, or he will attack for 11 for nothing. And
yeah, exactly. And that's so much, you know, when they attack for 11 with that one swing, that next swing that they may have now attacks for less. So maybe the card that you got off your trigger can then counter out of that attack. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like it's.
But now again, they know that I play only Deathwing, so I have to again change a bit of my strategy.
Well, hey, look, it's gonna work. It's gonna work for the vast majority of the populace. I will say. I think you know, the one of Deathwink as a bluff is hilarious. I think, you know, and I think we can use this as a way to transition into maybe some of the numbers, but. You know, the numbers I would say generally are a little flexible. I think you don't have to play the Deathwink. I think it's actually a smart call in a more knowledgeable metagame, where people will check your trash and everything. I think it is a smart call. In my opinion, I think where the numbers land, I played about 40 games. I think maybe about 10 of them on the chat, like posted up on YouTube. I played about 40 games, and it seems that the Margarets, from my experience, should be at 4, and the Apis and the Searcher should fluctuate between 3. So, you know, I think the number ends up being like, if it's like 3 Apis, it's 3 Searcher, or 4 Apis, 2 Searcher. Like that's where it should be. But there should be at least 2 Searchers, and there should be at least 3 Apis. I think that's where I ultimately land.
I agree with the True Searcher is something that it can't be played with True Searcher. Personally, I really like Apis right now, so
yeah,
I will keep for 4, but I understand for 3 or even less.
Yeah, and you play the Apis because you really want to do your best to try and play it once during the game, because at some point, like, I highly recommend anyone who still has their doubts about this list, go check out my last 2 YouTube videos on the channel. You will, like, so many games I've played, and again, it blows my mind. I feel like I blink, and then on my 9 and 10 on turn, I'm at like 20 cards left. I don't know how. Like I was never doing this with Deathwink. Like it blows my mind. I'm at like no cards. I have 4 to 5 life still. And like I'm not pressured. Like I'm fine. Yeah. I don't know how that's happening, and that's with the combination of being able to, you know, having enough searchers to look through your deck, pulling out the bricks, and it's like you don't even need to think about what to discard with Kaya. That is the best part. Before, it used to be like, oh damn it, I drew 2 Deathwings, I have to get rid of it now, it's only turn 2. No, you're discarding Impel Down and Perfume Femurs. Like it's not, you don't have to think about it. Like it's so easy what there is to discard, what there isn't. It's more clear now. I find the deck is actually easier to play but stronger, which is insane.
And something more, Apis is because the matchup that has Nami. So for now, low it's kind of hard, but with Apis and the 2k counter, it's becoming a bit easier. And blue, it's a hard matchup too. But because why? Because of pudding. But when you have Apis, you can easily keep your hand little, like for 5 or 6 cards, and keep avoiding the pudding of your opponent. So Apis is really good in this kind of format, because if you playing against a Dofi or a Boa, you always have to think about pudding, and always playing Apis aggressively to reduce your hand size is super important.
Yep. Yeah, so specifically pudding and then purple law. Purple law I find very frustrating, just because you just lose 2 random cards. At least when you're playing against something like blue law and they bounce the card back to your hand, and I'm bringing this up just because the influx of Dofi players everywhere. Blue law, you at least get to choose the card that you bottom deck. Not a lot of people are playing Gion right now, which is good. And putting at least like, okay, like you at least like draw cards back, right? Like those cards don't disappear. You get to use them again in the future, where something like purple law can be pretty frustrating. But again, Apis, what's nice about it is not only that it can shut off purple law, but it makes that pudding less valuable for them. Like they're gonna want to use it less. But I do find that, especially in lists now, I found people are okay with throwing out pudding, even if you have like 4 or 5 cards. And I think it's actually correct to do so, as if you're playing against Nami, because a lot of times you set up your hand so much, you snake dance a Kaya back to your hand, and the turn before you search for an event, like you're doing so much setup that it's almost correct to just disrupt the hand, even if they're netting a card. But
I would be happy if someone is putting me and I have 4 or 5 cards in hand, but sometimes it can disturb the hand. But
no, I mean, especially if you have 4 cards, you're happy to kind of take the extra card. I find that you, like, a lot of times, even at 5 cards and stuff, I will see blue players like throw pudding against me, and honestly, I would say, largely speaking, in the blind, I feel like it's just correct. Like, I think there's so much setup still happening in a Nami deck. You're bouncing so many characters back, you're searching for specific cards, you're planning out a specific line of play. It can be valuable to just like start a turn off by pudding, and then use your remaining 6 Dawn as the opponent to just then divide your, because then you're getting the Nami player to think again, reiterate their plan, whatever it might be.
End up and you are rearranging the bottom of his deck. If he's remembering the 5 last card of his deck, you have to shuffle it back, so it can be good.
Information is king. And so let's transition this into, we've kind of had a conversation about the list. Let's talk about the meta going into 07 a little bit. Talk to me about, and we're really this conversation is really gonna center around law, because I think a lot of players watching this video are gonna have a good idea, not only about this list, but they're gonna do some testing, but they're gonna run into law. And before I hop into that, talk to me about how you feel about the OP07 meta for Nami in general.
In general, I really like the OP7 meta. Not speaking as Nami player, but I really think the meta is really healthy. Because all the decks are kind of playable. They all have like one Nemesis deck, like one deck that they just can't win against. Like if you think about it, like I don't know, if you play Lucci, you can't win against Black Yellow Luffy. If you play Luffy, you can't win against Blue deck. When you play Blue deck, you can win against.
Shout out to Gravity Blade. Shout out to Gravity Blade.
So all the deck has one Nemesis, and I think it's kind of okay. I've never seen a meta like this, like even in other TCG, but it's quite okay. So for sure, Nami is his Nemesis is low. But I really like this kind of meta, because in Regio, when you are playing regional, you can lose 1 or 2 times. And if you are playing good, you only lose against your Nemesis deck. And if you don't play against your Nemesis deck more than 2 times, you can even top cut. So I'm kind of happy with. I'm not going to talk about OP8 because I heard it was different. But for now, I like this way.
Okay. So talk to me about, I kind of agree. I think there is a good amount of diversity. There's a lot of people trying different things. Rob Lucci players have been kind of coming back a little bit. We obviously have a lot more people interested in RP Law. And we do see yellow still around. Like, we have the reject ban, which kind of, pushes down Katakuri a little bit. I believe this is the set where Sakazuki gets his errata as well, right? Yeah, I believe. Yeah. So Sakazuki's gonna get his errata. So we're gonna get that card out of there, and Marco's gonna come in 08, but that's a whole other discussion for another time. But in this metagame, RP Law, whether doesn't have access to Black Maria yet. Not in our world. So talk to me about RP Law in OP07. How you feel about this matchup? Do you feel like it's 50-50? It's closer, better, worse? What do you think?
No, it's still, even with this new list that is playing cheaper, it's a really hard matchup. The deck is pretty strong against our deck. He's an aggressive deck, which is really bad for Nami, and his effect is to put back some card in your deck, and you are winning by making your deck disappear. So it makes you go slower, and he's super aggressive. So it's still a super hard deck, a super tough matchup, but it's playable.
Yes.
You can manage to do things to optimize your kind of luck, because you need luck for the matchup. And if you are playing, if it's the game that you will be lucky, you have to manage it to win it. Like, always playing around his mistake, always playing around different trigger. Even if you have counter, sometimes it's better to take your life to make the trigger happens. And if the trigger happens, you considerably make your win rate better. So you have to. There is some plan,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, there's so many moving pieces. There's so many cards now. I mean, at least now the cards that they're bottom decking have a little bit more forward movement, right? Like, they used to bottom deck like a Mr. one, and that's just a brick completely. Because you don't want, I don't know, like you pretty much, you Mr. one, you get a gavel back, but then they bottom deck another card and your gavel doesn't win you the game anyway, right? So, now at least they have to bottom deck a Gloriosa, which can search for another card that they bottom deck. Maybe they bottom deck in the future like a blocker, and then your Gloriosa, when you draw that, can then search for that blocker. You play that, blah, 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 draw cards. Like, it's a little better, right? It's a little better at the end. But it's still, again, a tough matchup. What are if you have any, what are your general tips in 07 against the Law players, whether it be with the Kuja Pirates build, without? Like, what are you generally looking for? Maybe for someone hopping into a locals where like all the Lucci, not Lucci, all the Law players are running around. What would your general tips be for them?
So the general tips, the basic one first. So the key card of the matchup is White Snake, of course. So if you able to spatter your top deck and you see a White Snake, it has to be a key for you to keep the White Snake up. So this is important. So as we know, he's putting back our character at the bottom of our deck. The thing is, if he has already 5 character on the field, he has to remove something to put something else. So it's important to play your character slower in the beginning, like to more play Sanji Pilaf than Kaya, because when he has 4 or 5 character on his board, it will be more efficient to play at this moment 1 Kaya, 2 Kaya, 1 Kaya and 1 blocker, 1 Kaya, 1 searcher, because if he want to remove something, it will it has to remove something, and it will be less relevant, less efficient for the low player.
Yeah, I mean, it always leaves something behind that way. You know, if, as you were saying, like you take a snake dance trigger, you have something to bounce, or, you know, like you want to play things out in volume, maybe not one by one.
Yeah, and what is really important that you just said is playing around your trigger. You have tons of trigger that bring back things in hand, and this is super important. Like if you know that he's going to play, he's going to attack with two different character or one character and one leader. You can take the first one, see if there is one bounce the character that would be attack, and it can't attack anymore. So you can play around your trigger. Sometimes low players are doing mistake because they don't really know Nami. So just take the opportunity to abuse these mistakes.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, at the end of the day, as you mentioned, I find the same thing. It's still going to be a tough matchup. It's still going to be really hard, but you know, like we didn't get any cards that solve the matchup, you know, like we didn't get a character that, you know, comes down, and, you know, we don't have any One Piece characters with hexproof or shroud yet, like where they can't be targeted. You know, nothing like that. So nothing is safe from the law ability. And I guess I think that's where I land too. Like, I don't have many tips. I think it comes down to smooth play. If you're able to, you know, using your spadas to, you know, bottom deck where you can. If they keep bottom decking your Kayas, you know, pushing those back up to the top, even with the white snake trigger. Like if they have a wide board and they're coming at you with some open dawn, maybe the white snake isn't as relevant in your hand, and you would just end up like, you know, use the trigger, look at the 5, push some cards back up to the top. Stuff like that. It's really the micro things. At the end of the day, it comes down to your triggers, right? Like
and there's another plan. There's another plan when if low doesn't touch any Reiju that make him draw, you can begin to attack his board.
Yes.
And sometimes his hand will be super small, and at this time you can attack for, like, if he has 3 or 4 cards in hand, you can attack for 7 his character, and it will be complicated to defend for him.
Yeah.
So
yeah. No, I think
when he has a Reiju.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say, I think a lot of players are talking about if they do ban something out of law, like it's Reiju. That card's probably the most frustrating card. Oh, Jesus, to play again. That and Shachi and Penguin, but Shachi and Penguin makes it feel like they never even used an ability. Like they got 2 active Dawn back. I don't know who designs these cards, but anyway.
Because there is 2 threads in the low deck. There is the problem with low. It's like they can reduce his amount of Dawn really fast, but he has Kid. So if he doesn't have Kid, you can abuse this, and he will attack lower. So the white snake is really good. And if he hasn't the Reiju, he will have some hand problem, and at this time you can attack his board, and it will be easier.
That's good. Yeah, no, those are good things to highlight. The Kid blocker, just enabling them to return Dawn for free, and then especially in the late game, very relevant in the late game. And then in that kind of mid game, if they don't cheat out a Reiju, like exactly, just start swinging into the things that, you know, use a couple more Dawn. The Dawn that you would use to maybe cast a white snake, or sorry, not a white, maybe like a Love Mellow to counter out of an attack. Use that Dawn, put it on a Nami, and swing into one of their characters. You know, maybe kind of potentially killing it or getting some cards out of their hand, whatever it might be. As long as they don't have a Reiju, a play like that can be valuable. So you're right. That's a good thing to point out. Is there any other problem that you perceive in the 07 metagame, or are they generally like, you know, bad matchups, good matchups, whatever? Is there any matchup like Law that you think Nami players should look out for?
To be honest, I think all other matchups are winnable. There is some cards that are still complicated.
Right.
Like you have to care. You have to care about it. Like Cody Jones, you have to take care. You have Zoro, but 9 cost Zoro is more easier to deal with now that we have some blocker. Because if you want to attack for 60k, but we can just rest the blocker and take nothing. But No, I think everything is winnable. Now that we have Apis, we can deal with Pudding. There is not a lot of Sakazuki. Ener is quite easy. Bonnie is easy. Perona is easy. Dofi is, as I said, you have to care about Pudding. What comes in my mind? Zoe, it's easier now. Fluffy doesn't exist. So I think the meta is kind of okay for now.
Yeah. All the purple Luffy players, biding their time for 08 to play a strictly worse purple leader. They'll tell you, Luffy's back. I just don't play purple. Come on, there's so many better purple leaders to be playing in that metagame. But anyway, so we won't touch on 08 metagame. We just finished pre-release for 07. We got all this excitement for 07. Talked about the list, talked about some of the matchups, and I'm really excited for this Kuja Pirates build to really take off in a big way. It's one of the many, I guess, if we can call it a benefit of a staggered metagame, East versus West type of thing. We have a bit more time to see what the East has done and kind of extrapolate from there. So I don't know whether or not you take it as a plus or minus. That's fine. What are your thoughts for, I want to kind of go into one of our last topics here to close out the discussion. What are your kind of thoughts for Nami moving forward? Like, are you perceiving any trouble in 08? Are you kind of generally excited for 07? What's your thoughts on Nami moving forward?
I really like Nami right now because it was a long time that we didn't really change our deck. It was kind of similar, like we just add White Snake. But I really like it because we changed a lot and the deck building was so fun and the new format is just beginning, so it's a lot of excitement. So I'm super happy with OP7. I've seen some trouble for OP8 in Japan for the metagame. There is low everywhere with Black Maria. But you know what? I'm going to trust Bandai for this one, and I'm sure they will take the experiment from Japan.
yeah. Let's see what happens with the metagame right now. Let's see what happens with Law. Personally, I think the worst part about Law, the dumbest part about Law, is the fact that its ability still works even though it doesn't have an active target. Like you can still bottom deck a card. You can still cheat out a 4-cost. Even if there's nothing to bottom deck on your opponent's side. I think that's the dumbest part about the ability. But it's okay. I'm not a card game designer. I'm just a player that has to suffer. So that's okay.
But let's trust them. I'm sure they will find something.
Well, based on how they handled Sakazuki, RP Law's being thrown into the ground. It's gonna be like they're gonna errata RP Law to like -5 Dawn. You get to cheat out a 4-cost, but you have to bottom deck like a 2-cost or less or something. Like they're gonna burn RP Law to the ground, which I don't agree with. I think I've always had the opinion that touching the leaders is incorrect. I think banning leaders is incorrect because they're the centerpieces of the game. I think exceptions exist, but if exceptions exist, it's probably just poor play design. Like it's probably them admitting I don't know. I don't think they should be banning leaders. I think it sets a bad precedent. I think what they did to Sakazuki sets a really bad precedent. They should have just banned a card out of it. I think that errata was disgusting. They literally destroyed the leader. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad because Sakazuki is one of the decks that has a decent matchup against low.
Yep.
So
exactly.
I'm kind of sad. But I'm trolling a lot the Sakazuki player, but in my heart and I'm kind of sad for the ban because I liked it to play less against low, but
Yeah. No, and you know what? It was Sakazuki mirrors like everywhere. But it was a high skill deck. It was a deck with a lot of decisions, so I think it rewarded play, and I think a lot of players liked it because of that. I didn't mind it. It didn't necessarily do anything busted. It was just powerful. It just had access to the best cards, and it was just a symptom of that. It wasn't doing anything insane like Black Maria and purple decks in 08, so it wasn't doing anything crazy. But whatever. But let's.
Come back, huh?
Pardon?
Maybe he will come back in OP8 like they did with Edward Newgate.
Ah, oh Lord, that's. I don't need red to be good again. I don't need red to be that good again. And I'm already scared about Marco. I'm already really scared about Marco. Yeah. Forget about 08. Yeah, I'm scared about like the Marco support in thing, but in 09. But yeah. Talk to me. The last topic I want to ask you before we end things off. Last thing I want to ask you, because it's been my favorite thing to talk about or think about. Blackbeard, OP09 yeah. Blackbeard. I think Blackbeard. Like creating a prison deck that they're introducing into the OPTCG. I've had a lot of thoughts. I made my own video about it, but I wanted to get other kind of perspectives on it. I think it's a really interesting place where they're taking design. I think it's interesting they're exploring different things like this because every leader so far has just been centered around combat. It's just been around attacking, doing it different ways, getting different types of card advantage. There hasn't been any alt win cons like Nami, and there hasn't been control decks like Blackbeard. Like Blackbeard is the first unique ability, in my opinion, maybe outside of Vegapunk, in the OPTCG. So I wanted to get some thoughts. What do you think?
Actually, when I saw it, I was so happy. I was like, oh, this is so funny. The first thing I thought, it was Moria, 8-cost Moria. I was like, oh, it won't do anything. But then I thought about Kaya, that you can't play. And I was a bit more upset about that. But actually, I really think it's a unique and cool design. I really like it. Maybe we will see more vanilla card, and maybe the game will slow down a bit. People will play more slow card. The only thing I'm afraid of is the crew of Blackbeard. If there has really broken crew member, it can be difficult. But to be honest, I really like the design.
Yeah, and I think this is the type of ability they really have to be careful with because they need to leader lock some of this stuff. They can't just say really negative on playability but good activate main. They can't do that because the other black decks will play that. It does not like the on play abilities have to be really bad. They have to be really, really, really bad. You can't just be like, oh, on play, sacrifice another character, then you get this activate main. Haha, Blackbeard balance. No. Because the Lucci players will play that. Any Black X players will play that, right? So I think it's all about how they balance these abilities. Because on a base level, I mean, like having a leader that shuts down all our, pretty much shuts down Nami in so many ways in terms of its characters. It shuts down all yellow decks. Like yellow is just shaking in its boots against Blackbeard. That is a color that cannot function without on play.
That's so true.
Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
But yeah, as I said, it reminds me a lot of the Death and Tax deck in Magic: The Gathering, and I really like the deck. So why not one in One Piece?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, fair enough. Okay, so just some early thoughts. Let me know if you're this far in the video in the comment section down below what you think about Blackbeard, how you think it'll affect the game, and we can have that discussion. But for now, this is where I want to end things off. I don't want to take things too far here. I think we had a great discussion just around kind of the new 07 list. I'm really excited. Do you have any closing thoughts for Nami players in 07 moving forward?
Yeah, sorry, what does that mean, closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts, just any final statements, like any tips, okay. Like if you're excited, like what you're looking for here.
Yeah, okay, I got it. Yeah, I'm so excited. This is so cool because we actually have a community around one deck, and thank you to you to be this guy to make the community worse, and it's why I was talking about other players that. One guy like you, it's super important for each deck, and we are super loyal with our deck, and I really like it. I'm super excited, and I'm sure we will discover a lot of good things with the deck in the future. So I'm so happy about that.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I share the sentiment about as well. I'm excited for 07. I'm excited to do some testing this coming weekend. Yeah, and I look forward to it. Let's run some Kuja Pirates. Ramtin, thank you for joining me on the call today. Hopefully here for many more videos with you and other great Nami players as well. If you're this far in the video, again, leave a like on the video. Let me know what you want to hear from Ramtin next. I'll have Ramtin's socials on Twitter down below. My man's tweeting every so often. He's cooking. Follow him there. You know, let's keep this Nami community whole.